Something really crazy happened on my channel a couple of weeks ago. I put a furniture makeover up with this outdated hutch that nobody wanted from the thrift store. I got it for 20 bucks and I painted it blue and made it look more modern and showed you a bunch of different ways that you could use this furniture in your home. This video went absolutely crazy. In 10 days, it's been viewed over 570,000 times, and the response to it has been something that I can't explain. I have some videos on my channel that have gotten up to 1 million views, but it took months to years to get to that point. And I honestly thought my channel had passed those days and I was never gonna see a video like this again. So I can't really explain why it became so popular, but there are so many new faces here and it resonated with so many people. And I think I know why, because the paint that I used is really beginner friendly. You don't have to prime, you don't have to sand, and it has a built-in top coat, and you put it on with a roller and a brush, so it's super easy. And I have been working with Beyond Paint for years, and I have a number of makeovers that some of you probably have never seen. So I'm putting them all together in this video, every Beyond Paint makeover I've ever done, and I'm gonna include some updates on where these pieces of furniture are today. This is the piece I'm going to be tackling today. I thought this piece was going to be perfect for this paint because it's really flat and it's going to be easy to roll out. I'm going to try to make this makeover as affordable as possible, so I'm going to save this hardware and try to clean it up because I really like the way that it fits with the piece. But I didn't like these little decorative things on the side, so I'm just using my painter's tool and a hammer to pry these off. I'm going to fill these holes up and sand this down to smooth it out, but first I need to clean my whole piece. Remember, I said we're not going to prime, but we definitely do need to clean our piece, and for this paint to adhere well, it needs to be free of oil and dirt and grease. So there are a number of ways that you can clean it. You can use a mineral spirits to clean it off. You can use a water and vinegar mix, or you can use a degreaser. I opted to go with a degreaser, and the one that they recommend is Simple Green. I found mine at the grocery store, but you can also get these at hardware stores or on Amazon. It's really easy to use. You just spray it on, let it set for a little bit to really cut that grease, and then you can come back in with a cloth or a scrubby sponge to get off the really stubborn areas. After cleaning the whole dresser, I took some clean water and wiped it down to give it a good rinse. Like I mentioned earlier, I really like the way this hardware looks with the piece, so I'm going to remove all of it and save it for later. I'm also going to remove all the drawers and set them aside to paint separately. Once I got the drawers out, this thing was really dusty on the inside, so I went ahead and cleaned that up. And I also wiped down the drawers where they had a little bit of dust from the hardware. My last step in prepping is to fill any holes or gouges I have on my piece. So I'm just using a wood filler here, letting that dry, sanding that down smooth, and then I'm going to use a tack cloth to remove any dust that I kicked up. It's time for the fun part. Let's paint. On the Beyond Paint website, you can actually purchase this toolkit, and it comes with this roller, a paint pan, and a chip brush to complete your project. I like to line mine with foil because I'm lazy, and then I don't have to wash it in between coats. This is the paint I'm using today. This is Beyond Paint all-in-one paint. You do not have to stir this. It is going to be super thick, like pudding consistency, so don't let that throw you off. Do not add any water to this. You don't need to do that. I just made sure I cleaned off my lid really well so that it didn't stick when I put it back on. You want to roll out as much of your piece as you can and just use the chip brush for any areas that you can't reach with the roller. This paint is going to adhere to almost any surface. You can apply it to raw wood, painted wood, whether it's oil, latex, polyurethane, varnish, or epoxy. It's also going to stick to metal, formica, laminate, which is a huge one if you don't know if your piece is real wood or not, plastic, linoleum, masonry, tile, and even glass. So this paint can basically go on anything. This paint does go on very textured, but it levels down a little bit as it dries, but it is meant to fill little nicks and dings. So it's not going to be a completely smooth surface. It looks smooth, but it does have a little bit of a textured feel to it. You might have noticed I'm wiping down each drawer with a tack cloth. That's just to make sure that they're completely dust-free before I start painting.
I made sure to do a little bit of the overhang on the frame just because I don't want to see any of that wood once I put my drawers in. This is the part where I had to grab that chip brush to get in those little cracks in the frame. You really just want to push the paint in there and stipple it in there, not use regular brush stroke motion. Like I mentioned, it's going to go on really textured, but it levels out as it dries. This first coat needs 2 to 4 hours to dry, so I took all my tools and put them in Ziploc bags to save them for my next coat. And I just threw away my foil liner so that my paint pan is ready to go for the next coat. While that was drying, I worked on my hardware. So I'm just prepping them by sanding them down and getting all that corrosion off. I'm just going to be using a spray paint to finish these off in a flat black. This is a Rust-Oleum one that has a primer in it. As long as I sand and prep my hardware well and I let the paint cure completely, I have had really good luck with these spray paints holding up on hardware. Now I'm going to let these set overnight so they're nice and dry before I add them to my piece. So here's what my drawer looks like now that it's dry. It's nice and smooth, but it does have texture to it. And I wanted to show you compared to what it looks like wet to dry now. There's such a difference. So this second coat goes on just the way the first coat went on. Again, I want to show you that stippling motion you do with the brush in the places you can't reach with the roller, and then you roll out everything else. And I don't think I mentioned this yet, but this color is actually called PEWTER, and I have the quart, which covers 50 to 100 square feet in 2 coats, and that's about 10 to 12 cabinets. I think for a project this size, all you're really going to need is a pint, and that covers 25 to 50 square feet with 2 coats. You want to let it cure for 2 to 3 days before you're really moving it around the house, and then it takes 30 days for it to cure completely before you can clean it with a soap and water. So I let my piece dry for a couple of days and then I brought it in and put it back together. So this was 1 day worth of work, 2 days worth of drying. Here is what I started with before, and here is what my piece looks like now. I can't believe how fast this makeover was. I really think this paint is great for anybody who's a beginner or just like a DIYer that just wants to fix something up for their house and doesn't want to have a lot of tools or go through a lot of guesswork getting it done.
This gray dresser is one of the most popular videos I have on my YouTube channel. To date, it has been viewed 2.2 million times. This dresser was in my son's room for a couple of years until I made over another one and replaced it. And then last year I made it over again, and because I was so backed up and busy with creating content, I ended up just donating this one to the thrift store. And unfortunately, I went in there and saw how much they listed it for, and it was only listed for like $400. So I decided if I was gonna donate furniture, I was never gonna go in and look again and see what it was priced for, because I know I could have sold it for more than that, but who knows where that is today. Maybe somebody watching will say, hey, that's in my home. It's a piece of Stanley furniture. It's in good shape, but it is like 80% laminate. So using Beyond Paint is gonna be great today because I don't need to sand or prime to get my paint on. The first thing I need to do is modernize this before I even clean it or add any paint. So I'm gonna remove the hardware and I'm gonna cut up this base. Okay, now that I've got the base squared off, I just want to smooth this out a little bit. So I'm just grabbing a sander and using a medium grit sandpaper. This is a 150. I'm gonna do heavy duty strength. So this is 1 part cleaner, 1 part water. So let's go ahead and get to cleaning. Now I got all that dirt and grime and grease off. She's nice and clean, but we want to rinse all that residue back before we start painting. So I've just got some clean water and I'm going to wipe it down with a clean cloth. Okay, these hardware holes are a weird size, so I know I have to fill them. I want to fill them pretty quickly and want it to dry quickly, so I'm going to use a wood epoxy. This is a 2-part epoxy. When I mix it up, it'll get really hard really quickly in about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to take this and fill up all the hardware holes. Now that my wood epoxy is dry, I'm gonna take my orbital sander and smooth it out. I'm gonna start with a 150 and then make it even smoother with a 220. You normally have seen me put it on with a roller and a chip brush, but I wanted to put myself to the test today and try to spray this. You guys know I've been getting really comfortable with my Wagner sprayer and I love it a lot, and I've seen people spray it, so I am intrigued. So we're gonna get this in my sprayer and spray it on my piece. So I'm using the detail nozzle on my Flexio 3500. This is the one I'm most comfortable spraying with. It's great for furniture and cabinets. The thing about Beyond Paint is you do not need to thin it out. And it's really, really thick. The rules that you normally see me talking about don't apply with this paint. I'm not priming. This piece is 80% laminate and I'm just gonna go right on with paint. So you can thin this out a little bit if it doesn't come out of your sprayer. Like I said, I've never sprayed it before, so we're gonna see how this goes. I'm gonna put it in without straining it, without adding any water, and we'll see how the sprayer tackles it. I can adjust my material flow right here. So I'm gonna have that pretty open right now to start because of how thick the paint is. And then my air power, I'm really gonna play around with because I know this is thicker. When I spray my chalk style paints, I usually spray them at a 5, but that is really thinned out and this isn't thinned out at all. So I'm probably gonna start at the 5 and then bump it up and see how that goes. But like always, since I'm using a new paint, I'm gonna test out my paint before I take it to my armoire. My gun is jumping a little bit, so this is telling me that the paint's too thick. Now, the instructions do say you can add a little bit of water if your gun is getting tripped up, so I'm gonna add just a little bit of distilled water and thin my paint out a bit. Okay, this is still drying, but it was pretty dry to the touch, so I was able to lift it up because I'm gonna spray the inside. I'm gonna give this a whole new look on the inside as well. So as this continues to dry, I'm gonna spray the inside. Pretty dry. It's been drying for about 2 hours. You want to allow 2 to 4 hours to dry before your second coat. And we want to hit up the inside of the drawers since we missed that on the first pass. So I'm going to spray the outside of these drawers and then I'm going to go ahead and add the second coat over the entire piece. Okay, I'm back for day 2. I am really impressed with how this paint has dried down, and this smoothed out way more than it does with a roller. It still has a little bit of texture to it, but I really love the finish. It's like a matte eggshell finish. So today we're just gonna put the final touches on it. I have some cool wallpaper I wanna put on the back inside so that you can have it open and have it look really cute. And then we're gonna add new hardware. Just to remind you, here is what we started off with, and here is the cabinet after. I really love how this turned out. Spraying Beyond Paint was a lot of fun. Okay, this armoire I listed with a bunch of other stuff all at the same time, and for some reason this one did not sell. I think originally I had it listed at like $450. Did not sell, sat in my garage all summer, and then when I was starting to make content again as the school year started up, I was like, I have to get this out of here. So I ended up selling it for $150. And the person who bought it was gonna use it to store homeschool stuff. So I didn't end up making a profit off of this one, but as you guys know, I make most of my income now off of creating content and partnering with brands and affiliate sales. And if you wanna learn more about that, I have a video all about that I will link in the description box, and you can tap the upper right-hand corner and watch that video as well. The person who previously refinished this did a great job. It looks really good, it's clean. The finish is not failing at all, so I can actually paint right over top of this. I'm not a fan of the hardware, so I'm removing that and I'm gonna replace it with some finger pulls. So I'm eventually gonna fill these holes, but first we're gonna remove it and clean everything. The only thing you have to do to prep this piece is clean it with this simple green. You don't have to scuff sand. I like to let this set for a couple of minutes, then I'm gonna go in and scrub it with a scrubby sponge and I'll rinse everything back with some clean water. The rinsing part is just as important as the cleaning part. You wanna get all this residue off so that your paint has a good surface to stick to. I'm gonna use this heavy duty wood filler, this DAP plastic wood, to fill up my hardware holes. This dries really fast in 15 minutes, so I'm gonna be able to sand and paint really quickly. Okay, I did a test drawer. It is all dry. I was kind of concerned about this black portion because it's raised and it has a different texture than the white pieces. And I'm definitely seeing that line. The paint is drying differently on it. So I'm going to sand and smooth back this black part on the drawer fronts so that it's gonna give me a nice even look across the drawer.
I like to line my tray to make cleanup a little bit easier, but this paint does clean up with soap and water, which is a nice feature. It is really thick, so it looks almost like a pudding consistency. You don't need to shake it, you don't need to stir it, just put it right in your tray.
What is great, like a flat piece like this, is I am basically gonna be able to paint the whole thing with a roller. If you had curves or little details, you would just use the chip brush and smooth that in. I've done that on other pieces that I have, but using Beyond Paint on a really flat, clean piece like this, it makes it super easy to get this paint on really fast. So like up here, it's gonna be hard for me to get in the roller, so I'm gonna use this brush, and you do a stipple motion like this. You don't paint like that. This paint doesn't like that, so you're gonna stipple up in here, and then you can smooth it out with the roller. The great feature about this paint is that it literally can be painted on anything: wood, linoleum, glass, laminate, plastic, varnish, tile, masonry, metal, and like I'm doing today, a painted surface. The first coat really primes and bonds to the piece, and then the second coat, when you come in, you get a lot more coverage. And depending on the tone of the piece and how dark it is underneath, you might have to do a third coat.
I ended up only having to do 2 coats on this piece. I like to buy a quart just to make sure that I have enough paint, but a pint probably would have worked here. I just like to have overage in case I need to make touch-ups down the road.
Now that this is completely dried, I'm gonna add the new hardware. I got these really cool finger pulls from Amazon. The screws that it came with were too long, so make sure when you're doing screws like this, you don't want them popping through this. That would be really bad. So you just wanna line them up and make sure that they're not gonna poke through the front. I'm putting these little felt pads right by the screws, and I'm gonna put them on the corners as well so they don't chip up the paint that's on the frame. I love these legs and they're in pretty good shape. The color looks great with this sage color, so I'm just gonna clean them up. And then I'm gonna rinse them with some water. I have this DAP repair stick. It has a marker on the end, so I'm just gonna take this and touch up any little spots on the feet that need it.
Another one-day makeover complete. Just to remind you, here's what we started off with, and here it is now. I really love this update. I love how the color goes with the natural wood legs, and I love the new hardware too. I think it's a nice touch. The best part is this took one day. It was quick and easy and beginner friendly.
This one I sold through a reseller that I was trying out for a little bit, and from the best of my records that I can tell, I ended up selling this dresser for $450.
So I'm going to start prepping my piece, and the first thing I'm going to do is remove this hardware. I am going to update this to give this more of a modern look, so I'm just going to remove this and set it aside. The hardware holes are 3 inches apart, so this is going to be really easy to find a replacement for. I'm going to clean my piece off with Simple Green. This is what Beyond Paint recommends to clean your piece. This is an all-purpose degreaser. Since I do have 2 doors with hinges, I'm going to remove those because I don't want to get paint on those, and I definitely don't want these to stick and rub. So I'm going to paint my doors separately and keep all the hardware in a separate bag and labeled so that I know where it goes when I put everything back together. This piece of furniture was actually in really good shape. If you had any nicks or dings, you would want to fill them with wood filler before you start painting, but I only had to fill these 2 little pinholes from my hardware that I removed. And I'm going to start off with my chip brush, and you want to use this to get in any details. So I'm really using it to get in the recessed parts of this panel. And when you paint, you're not going to use a brush stroke motion, you're going to use a stippling motion. So you're going to bounce up and down, and it's going to create a little bit of texture and just get the paint in every nook and cranny and set you up for rolling. Once you have all that detail filled in, you can grab your roller and then smooth out all the flat surfaces. I really love this paint for beginners, for someone who's never flipped a piece of furniture or someone who wants to do it really fast. The stippling motion and then rolling it out is a really easy technique, and it gets the piece done fast. It's really great for kitchen cabinets or vanities, and they have a whole kit where you can do countertops and give them a whole new look too. Before I paint my doors, I'm just going to sand down my wood filler now that it's dry with that 400 sandpaper and wipe back any dust. I prop my doors up on some painter's pyramid so that they're not sticking to my drop cloth, and I'm going to just do the same process, going in the details with that chip brush and rolling it on smooth. This is the back side of the doors. I'm going to finish both sides of the doors, very typical to if I was doing a kitchen or a bathroom vanity. So doing a piece like this is great practice to see if you would like tackling your kitchen or your bathroom vanity down the road. While I let the inside of the doors dry, I'm going to go ahead and do this drawer. Now that these have dried a little bit, I'm going to flip them over. I definitely recommend some painter's pyramids like this because they are going to keep that finish I just did on the other side nice and intact. I used about 8 ounces on the first coat, and on the second coat, I probably used about 6. Just plan accordingly because you never want to run out of paint. That's horrible, but having some paint left over is never a bad thing. The longer you can wait to put your piece back together, the better off you are. This paint is going to cure after 30 days, so that's going to be at its hardest. So if you can let it set for a couple of days or even a week to harden up a little bit before you put everything back together, I think that's your best idea. But I promised you a one-day makeover, so we're doing it. So I'm putting this hardware back on. I did tape up where the hardware holes are on the side of this piece so that I didn't get gunked up with paint. So I'm just getting the hardware back on and then getting these doors back on properly. I ended up picking a champagne bronze, really classic looking hardware knob and pulls to go on this piece to coordinate with the new color. I thought I was going to be able to get away with the way these hinges looked, but once I got the new hardware on, they looked really, really yellow. So I'm going to mellow them out a little bit. I'm going to start by sanding them with that 400 sandpaper that I have, just to rough them up a little bit to get some paint to stick to them. And then I'm going to wipe that back. And I grabbed an acrylic metallic paint from the craft store. This is a champagne bronze. And since this was already gold, I didn't have to cake this on. I just kind of lightly feathered it on. I didn't even do a full coating, but it just mellowed it out enough that it took that brassiness, that yellowness off. Okay, another one-day makeover with Beyond Paint complete. Who is ready for the reveal? Oh my goodness, she's so beautiful, you guys. I love this color. The hardware just like really elevated this piece. It looks really modern, classic, coastal. I'm really feeling this one. I'm really liking it.
I refinished this sideboard in 2021, and because I got it for free, as well as the products for the project for free, I listed this pretty low for $250, so it sold pretty quickly.
Starting off by cleaning my piece with some simple green to remove all the grime and dirt. I grabbed this Crickwood epoxy. I really love this stuff because it dries really quickly and hard. You just form it in your hands together to mix the two compounds and then place it in the area that you want to fill. This had a lot of seams that once I got that light paint on there, I knew I wasn't going to like that look. So I just plugged up all those seams with this epoxy and it dries really fast. It's ready to sand within 15 minutes and it's ready to paint after 1 hour. My top was really damaged and this paint does a good job of kind of camouflaging things like that, but not when your scratches are this deep. You either need to go in and fill those with a wood filler and sand them down, or you can strip the entire top. And since I have some really good sanders, I decided to strip the top down and do a two-tone finish on this piece, but I totally gouged through the veneer as I was doing that. But I just kept going because at this point I needed to get all that existing stain off. I will go back and address that later in the video. Once I was done sanding the top, I went down and sanded all my epoxy so it would be nice and flat and those seams would all be filled. And then I removed all the hardware because I knew I was going to replace that. Chip brushes are great for this paint because they're really affordable and they do really well with the stippling type motion, but they do shed a lot. So you might have to pick out some hairs as you're going, pay attention to that. But once you get them out, just go back over and stipple that spot again and everything will be fine. And I always use the roller after I stipple to smooth out as much of that area as I can. After 2 hours of dry time, I'm ready to come back in and do my second coat. Everything is looking great and leveling out beautifully. But as I took a look at the piece, I wasn't liking the two-tone finish. I felt like the kind of orangey top was really taking away from the beautiful light beige color. Plus I had that problem of the gouge that I did in the veneer because I wasn't careful while I was sanding. So I decided to just do one color over the whole piece, and with Beyond Paint, what's great about it is that it sticks to so many surfaces like raw wood. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this top, and since this has this detailing in it, I like to take my chip brush and mush the paint down and stipple the paint down in there first, and then I'll roll the whole top. This piece is really, really dark and I'm going to a light color. And when you're doing that, you're probably going to need 3 coats. In this case, I did need 3 coats. The last time I did a project when I was using a dark color over a lighter finish, I only needed 2 coats. So just keep that in mind when you are ordering your paint, what you are trying to accomplish. I was able to get 3 coats out of my pint. I definitely would have felt a lot more comfortable having a quart on this project, but I think for most dressers that you're going to refinish, a pint will do just great. That's all I used on my previous Beyond Paint makeover. So after the second coat dried, I decided to put in the drawers so I could see what they looked like. And here's where I have a huge tip for you. As you are removing drawers from your piece, number them, because drawers really only are meant to go in one spot on your dresser. And it took me about 15 to 20 minutes to figure out where each one of these drawers went. Once I finally got my drawers in the right place, I went in and did a third coat touch up on any spots where I saw that dark wood still peeking through. I let my piece dry overnight, and I'm going to be adding some flat black knobs for some contrast to this light paint. I ended up having to get 1 1/4 inch screws because the 2 screws that this came with did not work. I need to order some of those in bulk. Does that ever happen to you? Another one-day makeover complete. Just to remind you, here is what I started off with, and here is what it looks like now. You know, I picked this piece out once upon a time, so I did really love it dark, but it's so fun to completely change it up and turn it into this light neutral dream and really bump up that drama with this flat black knob.
I talked my husband into keeping this dresser in our bedroom for a little while. He went from this huge gentleman's dresser armoire thing to that dresser, and his clothes just wouldn't fit in there. And he was a really good sport. He kept it for a while, but he was like, can we please get rid of this and put my big armoire back in here? Can you refinish that and do that? And so that is what we did. I put up on my Instagram that I was considering selling that dresser, and I got messaged by a friend, and I told her, you know what, she was offering to pay, but I said, why don't you just come take it? They had just moved to the area. And so she came and got that dresser, and hopefully she still has it today. Rubbed it with some Dawn dish soap because it was really dirty. This has been outside for 2 years. We built it right before the big C started, you guys. So this it's cracking. It needed some filling. So I did cleaning, I did wood filler, and now I'm gonna sand it before I paint it.
Everything I'm doing here is just to repair the condition of the table. None of this is necessary to prep for my primer or paint that I'm using today.
Normally I do not have to prime with this paint, but today for this table I do because it's knotty pine. And as you could see when I put the wood filler on, you could see brown seeping through those knots. They are gonna leak and have those tannins bleed through your paint. So you don't wanna do that. So for insurance, so that my paint looks really, really good, I'm gonna do a stain blocking primer that's specifically to block in wood tannins and seal these knots before I add my paint. I picked a beige color. This is called Pebble.
This Pebble color is stunning. It's like the perfect grayish. It's kind of beige and it's gray at the same time. It's a little bit of a chameleon, and it looks perfect for a wood table like this.
But you can also use it on outdoor furniture. So we're doing the table today, and we're doing this little cart.
And yes, this is metal and it's gonna stick on here. You want to wait that full 2 to 4 hours. Wait for, if you can. The drier it is, the better your second coat's going to go on. I did end up doing a third coat on the cart just because I was going from a white to a dark color.
This is what I call a patio refresh. I cannot wait to sit out here tomorrow morning with my coffee. I can't believe what a difference Beyond Paint made on this table. It looks brand new. Before it was rustic, looked like it had been left out into the sun to be damaged for a couple of years. Now it looks like a brand new table, and I saved so much money by refinishing it. The same with the cart. I love the deep mocha color. It's just so sophisticated. I always get asked how much paint I use. So for the table, I still have about 1/4 of a can left of that pint. And then for the cart, I only use like 1/4 of that. So I still have a lot of that mocha color left to use on a project later down the road. So I just did this outdoor makeover last year, and everything is holding up really well. The paint surprisingly holds up really well outdoors. The only thing I will tell you is that all those repairs I made still cracked and split. I don't know if this wood that we used wasn't pressure treated, but it definitely has nothing to do with the paint. It's just the structure of the table. So I'm probably looking to get rid of this table, but if you're wanting to use Beyond Paint outdoors, it has held up really well for me.
I bought this sofa table at the thrift store for $30, and it was in pretty good shape. It just had a little bit of nicks and dings that I had to fill with some wood filler, and I sanded that back already.
This Batwing hardware is really dated, so I know I'm gonna replace it. But again, I'm trying to keep this really easy for you guys. And I'm not gonna fill this hardware hole. This is 2.5 inches, and it's really hard to find replacements for this. But I have a trick, so definitely stick around to the end of the video so you can see how I make this work without having to drill new holes.
Cleaning furniture, I like to use it in a 1-to-1 ratio, and then around my house for cleaning, I like to use the 1-to-10 ratio. I let this set for 1 to 2 minutes to start loosening up all that dirt and grime, and then I come with a microfiber towel and scrub really. Once I got done wiping this down, I just took some clean water and rinsed any residue away. I'm going to be keeping the sofa table for myself because I want to try to get my kids to stop jumping over our couch in our living room.
I've chose a beautiful beige color, neutral Nelly here, but I've never used this one. This is linen. It's like a deep khaki. So I'm really excited to see what this looks like. To prep my roller, I'm just going to wrap it in some painter's tape and then take that back off. And that's going to help any of those loose fibers get off so they don't end up in my paint.
The best part and why it is so beginner friendly is that you don't have to sand, strip, or prime with this paint. They also have lots of colors to choose from, even some bold ones if you're not neutral like me. You just want to watch for drips and globs as you're going along. You really want to smooth those out as you can, especially on this sofa table when I'm doing the legs. The paint can pull up around the corners, so I was just being really careful to smooth that out as I went. On the second coat is when I started really falling in love with this color. You can see when I'm putting it on, the paint is a little bit lighter. It does dry down darker to this beautiful khaki finish.
So normally it would be ready to go. Most of the time when I use Beyond Paint, it has a built-in top coat, so you don't have to top coat, but they've just reformulated their top coat that you can use for countertops and high traffic area. And you know, since this is a sofa table, it's gonna be by my sofa that my kids keep jumping over, I thought, let's put the sealer on the top, see what it's like, and give it just that little bit of extra protection. But you do not have to use this. It's just in case you're worried about a heavy traffic area. So this is really milky white, so it's gonna apply really white, but it will dry down clear and it's gonna have a beautiful satin finish. And you're gonna apply it just the way you did the paint. I'm gonna use that same type of roller to put it on. While my top coat's drying, I'm gonna go ahead and add the drawers back in and show you my new hardware. I told you I had a really fun surprise on the hardware. I was able to save this irregular sized hardware. This is 2.5 inches. Standard size is 3 inches. So what I would normally do here is fill these holes, sand them back, and re-drill holes. But we wanna make it a lot easier for you because this is a beginner-friendly makeover, no skill required. So I got these really cool Liberty pulls that actually adjust. So I can move this up and down this bar and it's gonna fit perfectly to my size.
The instructions were really easy to follow. You just had to attach the bracket so they were facing the right way, and then there were little pins that you stuck in here next to the screw so that these would lay flat against the drawer.
My drawers are gonna hit up against a finished painted frame, and whenever I do this, I like to put little pads on here so that it's not gonna scratch up that finish. Just to remind you, here's the sofa table that I started off with, and here it is now. So this makeover was done at the end of last year, and we still have the sofa table in our home, and I really love it, and my kids are jumping over the sofa less, which was the goal of creating this, but it also just brings like a warmth and a comfort to the area, and I love having it in our home.
This is a great candidate for painting because it's maple, so I'm gonna get a nice smooth finish on it. Yes, you could strip this back, but that is going to take hours and hours and days, and using Beyond Paint is going to be a great way to give this a new look. And this one did have a furniture maker mark on it, and it is nothing special. It is a company that did a bunch of reproductive colonial pieces, so this is not a real antique. It was probably made in the 50s or 60s to look like colonial furniture. You can see just how easy this is to put on. I'm using the chip brush to get into any areas that my roller can't reach, and then I'm rolling out everything flat with the roller. But my favorite part about this paint is that it has the sealer built in, so after I put on my paint, my makeover is finished. I don't have to add an additional top coat. Beyond Paint is dry in 2 to 4 hours, but I let this dry overnight before adding my new hardware. You want to be careful with your furniture or cabinets that you paint for 30 days while it cures down to its hardest state. And with the installation of my last hardware pull, I am done with this project. I took this lonely, sad little hutch that nobody wanted to bring home and gave it a whole new look. And I actually think this could be used in a bunch of different ways, so I'm going to show you those. First off, I'm starting with it being a changing table because this is what I had envisioned in my head. It's the perfect height and the perfect size. And it has plenty of storage for all your diapers, wipes, creams, and even storage down in those cupboards for all those toys. I also think this would be a great showpiece for an entryway or a foyer, so I'm styling it really simply with this beautiful white vase and some faux stems. I think this could also be used a bunch of different ways, like a wine bar or a coffee bar, so I wanted to show you some AI stage shots. AI is a really fun way to envision how this is going to look in someone else's home or in your home, and even help you get some staging ideas. My favorite idea is still the changing table, but it's good to know you could use it other ways after you're done with it.
So this guy is so fresh, he is still sitting in the garage. I don't know if I'm gonna try to sell him or give him away. I'm not sure yet. I'm still so shocked at how well people responded to this video that I'm just kind of hanging on to him or her a little bit longer. Okay, so I am dying to know which makeover is your favorite. Leave down in the comments which one you liked the best. I'll leave all the products I used down in the description box, and you can also tap this little YouTube shopping button down in the corner here, and you can shop all these items that are available on YouTube Shopping. I hope you enjoyed my Beyond Paint Roundup makeover video. I'm sure this won't be the last time you see Beyond Paint on my channel. Thanks for being here, you guys, and I will see you next time.